everyone, Lauren Culp here, the publisher and CEO at CUInsight.com, and I am joined today by a very special guest. Joining our video is Todd Clark, the president and CEO of COOP Financial Services. Todd, hi, how are you?
I'm great, Lauren. How are you guys doing during this crazy time?
Oh, you're right, it is a crazy time. We are all hanging in there, I think, like everybody is. Thank you so much for taking some time to join me today. We have just 3 questions for this video, and let's go ahead and dive right in. Like you mentioned, these are really hard times for so many people. I'm curious, what is COOP doing to support credit unions and their members during this crisis?
I would start with, maintaining all of our business as usual applications, right? It's important during this time that cards work, contact center works, that the networks are available. Shared branch is never more important than in times of crisis like this. And so maintaining all of our existing operations and making sure those function well. With regard to COVID specifically, we quickly put together several programs and pushed those out to the credit unions to allow them to select from any or all of those programs, including skip a payment, and then also some forego interest and fees opportunities, and then forego fees on cash advances and things like that. All things that are related to our core business, but also help the credit union relate to their member better. And at the same time as we did all that, we took our contact centers and we blew them out into not only work from home but multiple physically distant spaces, so that we could maintain at least a reasonable level of service levels inside those contact centers. As you might expect, our transaction volumes are down, and that tends to be running in the 20 to 25% range on a daily basis, depending on the day. But our contact center volumes are way up, and there's lots of credit unions out there that don't have the ability to send their contact center folks home and allow them to do that from home. And so we're picking up a lot of accidental traffic that we weren't really prepared for. We're doing our level best to try and cover it. Also, we added a big section on our website around best practices in this type of environment, and it must be fairly popular because our website traffic has gone up, almost double what we would normally expect during this time of year. I talked about the contact center and the business continuity that we provide for those folks, and then finally, we continue to urge, and this crisis gives me further belief that everything that we were doing, pushing hard toward digital, self-service, all those aspects, and pushing for the credit union to make themselves the primary financial relationship, all those things still hold as true today as they were six weeks before the crisis, and I think they'll continue to remain that way.
That's amazing. Well, and you're right on, with the business continuity, I think payments are a lot, sort of like almost like an electric company where you only notice them if they don't work.
That's right. That's right.
Great that you all are focused on that first, and amazing to hear about the website traffic and everything else that you've been pushing forward for credit unions.
Yeah.
So Todd, I'm curious, thinking ahead, how do you think that this affects credit unions? I mean, there's so many far-reaching implications of what we're all dealing with right now. How do you think this is going to change the way we do business in the long run?
We're so early into it, and I had to remind my staff. We're talking about a board meeting we have coming up at the end of May, and I had to remind my staff that the board meeting is the same distance of time away as it. We've been working diligently on repurposing our contact centers and everything like that, right? And so the task that we've completed over the last week, it doesn't give you a lot of time to think about the future, but I think there's a few things that are out there. I think we should expect some pretty profound changes with regard to how we interact on a daily basis. I'm sure that eventually we'll get a vaccine, and this particular virus will subside and move on, and at worst case become a little like the annual flu, and best case will become like polio or smallpox and be effectively eradicated through vaccines. But I still think it changes how people think about things, and I can give great examples of I've had people who were building or on the path to build new headquarters and are now saying, wait a minute, do I really want everybody in one single building?
Right.
And I may have to rethink that as we go forward. And that's a multi-million-dollar decision that is being stopped and rethought in kind of midstream here. We think, we didn't get our multiple location strategy on purpose. We got it because we acquired several companies and they all had fairly good size operations. But that said, it sure seems handy right now that I have multiple buildings to put some people in, and I have the opportunity to have people work from home because of the technology we've had to employ because of the multiple work locations, right? Um, I would say that uh, that you'll. I think my view is we're going to slowly move back into normalcy over time, but I'm not sure we'll ever achieve real normalcy like we had, because I think things like cash are going to become less appealing. I think things like touchless cards or tap and go cards are going to become more appealing, and you can see that happening right now. People who were maybe in the queue for October release are calling and now saying, "Hey, can we move ourselves up in the queue?" There was a window of time at the beginning, Lauren, where everybody said, "Pause, we're not going to do anything," but literally 2 weeks in, it seemed like most credit unions, they had their operations shifted and now they're ready to get back to a little bit of normal business, right? I'll use my air quotes because it's not normal, because we're not going to see them. We're not sending trainers out to them. And I think it's forcing all of us to think how we can do more virtual type things. And I think that will continue. Big changes. And I guess the other thing is that the notion of open banking, API interfaces, ease of connectivity. You see a lot of open source and crowdsourced type projects being spun up, and they're able to spin those up relatively quickly because of modern technology. And so the way we've embraced that modern technology and our thoughts around that, I think it will continue to serve us very well, and our credit unions.
Right, right. Well, it's so interesting to hear about the ways that you've already been sort of leading the edge of having multiple locations and staff working from home, investing in technology. And you're right, I think we'll see a lot more credit unions who realize that they can actually have staff who could work remotely, maybe full-time, or that impact on offices and all of that.
Listen, I love nothing more than anybody, or more than anything else, getting together in a room and spitballing and having ideas and whatever else. And sometimes that's a little hard when you kind of crosstalk and on virtual, because everything's just slightly delayed. But and it's a little harder to read people's emotions if you can't see their face and see how they're reacting when you're saying things. But we've demonstrated that we can do it, and we've done it now for 6 weeks. And I would tell you that from an operational side, I think that Nick would tell me that productivity is, after a week and a half of a little disruption of people having to move their monitors home and things like that, that productivity has actually been pretty solid. And so we're not seeing a huge drop off in that regard. I think where it might hurt in the long run is creativity. I mean, it's really great to get in a room with post-it notes and do that creative thinking in that type of environment.
That's such a good point. Well, it'll be really interesting to see, what our new normal will end up being. And thank you so much for all of your perspective on that. I want to switch gears. I'm curious, you're a really well-known leader in the credit union space. How are you doing personally? What's been keeping you sane? Are you sane through these really tough times?
I would probably jokingly say wine, but trying not to overindulge there. I frankly think that this is where leaders shine, right? And so working long hours. I've given up shaving because I'm just. It seems like 7 minutes every morning that is a waste of time I could be doing something productive. And early every morning, I take a dog for a long walk and try and start my day off calm like that. And that's I don't get too ruffled one way or the other, and so that I think it's okay. This is the longest in my career I've ever been home. So in my 30-year career, I've never been home for 7 weeks straight. even after the birth of our kids and stuff, 2 or 3 weeks later, I was out on the road doing my job, and so it's a little strange, but I think it's more strange for the family than it is for me.
Sure.
So exercise every day, and the great news is I'm losing weight, because when you eat nothing but home cooked meals that are all well done, instead of all that eating out that you do when you're on the road, you find that weight, I don't want to say falls off, but it is coming off a little bit, and that makes me feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love the idea of getting out for a walk, and exercise has been big for me too during this time. So, well, Todd, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our credit union audience?
I think that, and when I was talking to our chairman just the other day, um, I think what it does is reconfirms everything that we were doing at Co-op, pushing us further and further to a digital world, utilizing modern technology. Um, it feels like the pandemic beat us to the punch on a couple of things, right? I mean, 8 months from now, we just finished a huge upgrade in our contact centers, and we had one more coming probably in August or September of this year. And had we been in August or September this year, the funny thing is that this pandemic, from a contact center perspective, would have almost been a non-issue. We would have had everything ready to go, the training all done, been able to move calls around in queue, and so we were preparing for disaster and problems like this. We weren't obviously preparing for a pandemic we didn't know was coming, but that falls into that category, and I believe we're doing it across the board. And so it's always nice to have something, even though it's a bad thing, confirm that you were doing the right things beforehand. And so real pleased to do that, or real pleased to say that, and know that our credit unions can trust us going forward to help them out.
That's amazing. Well, perfect way to end. So great to hear about all of the things that Co-op has been working on and continues to do, business continuity, all of the things that credit unions come to depend on. So great to hear from you, and all of the ways that Co-op is leading the charge on that. Todd, thanks so much for your time. We'll go ahead and link to your COVID page in the post here, so that I know you have a lot of site traffic right now on the site, but we'll link to it so that our viewers can get connected to that as well. In the meantime, I hope you and the family stay safe and healthy, even though you're going on 7 weeks home at this point. Thanks so much for sharing some time with me today, and I hope to someday see you in person again soon.
Soon, hope so too, to learn. All the best to you and your family.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye.